Okay, perfect. So, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm not sure. I'm so excited. Thank you for joining me today for my May South Coast Veterinary Management Solutions webinar. I'm very happy to have my good friend Suzanne on here, and she's going to be talking about some great stuff. So, I'm excited to do that. So, if you've never joined my webinar before, or you are new to me, my name is Melissa Tompkins Lewis. I am the owner of South Coast Veterinary Management Solutions. And I am a full-time practice management consultant. And what I say is instead of managing one hospital, I help with the management of many. So it's actually quite fun. I really like it. I'm really excited for today's webinar because I am going to be able to give everybody that's attending live CE credit. So I will be looking at your name on your Zoom sign-in. So make sure that your name on your sign-in matches who you are so I can make sure you get a certificate. If the name on your sign-in does not match, please shoot me a message and just tell me who you are so I can make sure you get credit for this. I did confirm I can give official VHMA CE, so I'm very happy to do that. But only if you watch it live. So I have to make sure I know who you are. So again, if you have never come to my webinars before, you know that this is recorded, uploaded to my YouTube channel, which is at South Coast Veterinary Manage 263. And it will be uploaded the next few days, so you can watch it later, or you can share it with your colleagues or coworkers, or maybe some of your team members if they're interested in watching it as well. If you have any questions, please throw them in the chat. Suzanne will answer questions here and there, but we'd love to have them in there so she can get back to you and take some questions from all of you. So please throw them in the chat, and I will be moderating that. And please feel free to use any of the fun emoji icon things on your Zoom. Anytime you like something she says, or you don't like it, hopefully you like it. And you can send hearts, smileys, rockets, whatever fun things. I love it when it's engaging. That's always fun for me and it's fun for everybody else. So please feel free to use your little emoji, emoticons, whatever we call them. So I'm trying to admit people to the waiting room. Hey, look at that. Thank you, Caitlin. I love love. I'm such a love person. It's so weird. I'm always using hearts. But anyway, so please, I love that. It's so much fun. So yeah, I guess we can go ahead and get started with our talk today. So please, Suzanne, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. And thank you all for joining on this webinar. I'm hoping to provide you maybe some tools that you can take with you. I by no means am an expert, but I found these tools helpful myself in my journey as practice manager. So I'm hoping to share some of that and the reason behind those tools with you today. So we're gonna I should introduce myself a little bit better. I moved to Maine, USA in 2019, so I'm from the Netherlands. I was in a study, and at the end of my study, I hit my head and ended up with a TBI, and therefore ended up as a horse trainer, specializing in behavior and connection, because that made sense, because I couldn't sit behind computers anymore because of my head. So I did that for almost 10 years, and then I moved to Maine. The reasons I moved are not the reasons I'm staying as of today, but I had an amazing journey here, so I'm here for the journey, and we'll see where it brings me later on in life. But I ended up starting in veterinary medicine in a GP, and then I moved to the ER, which was a Wild West show for me. I loved it very much, but it also became very clear to me where we have some gaps in between the people that are on the floor as well and the people that are in management. So when I had the opportunity to move into management myself, I took it, and I also started my journey as mental health coach, where I am now certified as a mental health coach, and I'm a national board certification candidate for the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching. So hopefully by the end of the year, I can put that behind my name, but we'll see. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the limitations of traditional performance reviews. And I don't want to say they're bad. I just want to say what my experience has been in this and what became clear for me when I was doing them from the employee perspective. So, what I really learned or what experienced during my time as employee on the floor was that the feedback that the my supervisor wanted to provide to me came kind of as a one-sided conversation, where yes, they asked me how I was doing and they asked me what I thought of it, but it didn't come from a place of growth where they gave me the opportunity to think about the feedback that they need to provide me. What I mean by that is I did not have an opportunity to um, think about why that feedback might have been given. What might have been my struggles internally that led to that feedback needed to be provided, right? So if I know that and how that made me feel, it made me feel that I didn't get the chance to process. I didn't get a chance to be seen. I didn't get a chance to be heard. So it felt really one-sided. And again, this isn't, I'm not saying it was all bad. I'm just saying that the component of the feedback that needed to be provided from the supervisor to the employee was very one-sided, and I felt very directed instead of getting an opportunity to grow from that. So what I kind of saw around me and I felt myself was that I was discouraged. I was, and I like to think I'm still a very hard worker and I had no problem staying late on my shifts and I had no problem running around crazy. But the moment that the feedback started to happen the way that it did, I did lose a lot of courage and I did get disengaged with the floor because it did feel like no matter what I did, it was not going to be good enough for the supervisor. So it got me thinking. And when I transitioned into the manager role, I recognized that there are many great mental health resources out there. There are many great um, CE, counseling, coaching things out there that if an employee recognizes themselves that they're struggling, they can reach out to those resources, whether it's not one more vet, whether it's within the practice. But it does take the employee to have the awareness that their mental health is getting worse for them to reach out. So we're already like kind of a step beyond what we can do as managers to help them before they are so far off the boat and they have to say, "Hey, I need to reach out to those resources and see how I can help myself in this." So those moments that we are planning to do anyway, the reviews, because they are important, because we do have to provide feedback. Those can be coaching conversations. Those can be moments where we can say, "Hey, what is going really well?" And yes, I have feedback to provide you, but let me first figure out where you are struggling. Let me first figure out that maybe what I need to provide to you as feedback, you are already thinking yourself, and therefore, if I can help you in my conversation with you, you can vocalize your struggle. Helps me not to be the hard ass saying, "Hey, you have to be better at XYZ." And now we can start thinking about, okay, how can we make that better? How can we help each other out with us as managers providing some sort of support? It's recognizing certain behaviors, it's creating the awareness, and it's then focusing on a growth moment. And those reviews, we can utilize that way because in the end, I'm still giving my feedback. And I will talk a little bit later that there is a fine balance in things, and it's not all just we're gonna have a growth mindset, and there are scenarios that we have to use boundaries, and we'll talk a little bit about that and later in the presentation. Any questions so far? Wonderful. So it requires a little bit of a different framework, right, to have those conversations. It requires a little bit of a shift in our mind where, again, yes, I am going to go in a conversation, probably because I have to provide them with some feedback. But I'm going to go into a conversation thinking the chances are that they're already thinking about the thing that I want to talk to them about, right? They are already thinking, oh, I made a mistake with the drugs the other day, and I know I catched it, but yes, I'm chaotic, and da 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 da. They are already going in themselves thinking about these things. And 9 out of 10 times, that is almost always that my feedback is also leading up towards, right? Is that recognizing of behavior. So I am going into a conversation trusting that I can provide the my employee, the chance of recognizing the weaknesses and struggles that they have themselves and vocalizing them to me so that I can help them and support them without being the bad person that tells them that they're doing stuff wrong, right? So in order to do so, we're going to utilize a couple of things. It's coaching principles. It's something called motivational interviewing. I call it motivational reviewing because I'm translating it a little bit into how we can utilize it as managers, but it is a lot of the same framework. It also requires reflective listening. It's very similar to active listening with the one component as a communication technique. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. That really helps ensure that both parties understand what's being said. And it is positive leadership and it is creating psychological safety. And those things I didn't come up with. We all know if we read the papers, the certain books, a lot of wonderful work that's out there about the 4 Ps in leadership and those things. But those are important components to create that setting that helps them grow. Because we want to make sure that our employees are heard, respected, safe, empowered, and involved in their own development. I think the last time I said to somebody, hey, if you do it this the way, it will be better, and it worked. I can honestly remember because I don't think it ever would played out the way that I thought it would play out. Um, because I will be the first one to say, if you tell me what to do, I'll be very bad at my job. But if you let me grow in a environment and you help me figure out my role, I'll probably thrive because you allowed me the the room to say, hey, I am learning best this way, and these are good way for me to receive feedback, and these are the things that I can do to better my job. So those are conversations instead of my boss telling me what to do. Because growth is the strongest when chosen. So again, all of our team members, right? All of our people on the floor, even in management, we have the imposter syndrome, we have our weaknesses, we know what we struggle with, we know where we get too emotional, we are very aware of all the bad things that we think we have as traits in a human. So those often are things that they want to get better at. It could be skills, it could be um, conversation with clients. It could be internal communication with team members. It could be recognizing where their mental health is and then saying, hey, I need to create a communication system so I can communicate to my team members that today is not a good day for me so that they can help me in that. So it's allowing the employee to recognize where they need to grow and helping them growing in that also means recognizing for themselves that how do I grow? What do I need to grow? How is the support? What does support look like? How do I receive support best? How do I receive feedback best? I have situations where I talk about literally how do we best receive feedbacks without it becoming a personal attack. Those are all important components, but it comes with the fact that, allowing our team members to look and create an awareness themselves where they can say, hey, this is where I want to get better as a team member, as a person, as a technician, as a manager, right? And trusting them that they have the answer. A big part of coaching is the coachee is doing the talking, not the person coaching. Coaches ask the questions. And in a true coaching session, and this is where it gets a little bit different from being a manager, there's no right and wrong. It's just asking the questions that allows the person to think, to truly process through what's going on in their brain. And again, managing there is a balance in things, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Where we do have boundaries because there is a business behind behind our role. So we have to balance business and being the person that can coach an employee in their growth. So motivational interviewing, who's familiar with motivational interview? Raise your hands. In however emoticon or emoji, whatever. Okay, so it is originally developed in behavioral health, and there are books about this. There's a lot of information out there. But it again, it comes with that it's a collaborative conversation style where the person interviewing the other person is focusing on one being present first and foremost, because actually you want to listen to what they have to say. But we're focusing on their journey, right? We're focusing on their growth and their commitment to change, because they use this in abuse therapy and rehab and things like that. So it's a very strong communication technique and tool that we can kind of build off of, restructure a little bit, and utilize in our settings in review to better understand our employee and to better understand how they think, how they learn, how they want to grow, how they like to be supported. But it also helps us to clarify the motivations. Why do they have the job? Because it is going to be different. Yes, we all love to be in this field, we truly do. But in the end, it's still different of why they are where they are, because there are multiple practices out there. And for some, the truth is there. It's a little bit about the money. Um, but there's often some other reasons as well. So the motivational interviewing technique really comes from the standpoint of the questions that they are using will allow the person to kind of explore their own brain and process their own thoughts and vocalize their needs and their wants. So in leadership, it will help us, even if it is a difficult situation, and I'll share some examples in a bit about this, where, yes, sometimes even in this wonderful coaching session, the end result is gonna be you're gonna part ways. So we're not avoiding hard conversations, we're not avoiding setting boundaries, but we are creating a situation, we are creating an environment where we can reflect of, on the situations and learn from it, and not from a place of resistance, from like a place of partnership. And it also will help, with accountability, because if they have internal motivation and they feel psychological safe in your environment, then they will also feel more accountable towards their own task and their own job. So within that motivational interviewing framework, these are kind of the basic communication tools. Open-ended questions, affirmations, reflective listening, and summarizing. So I think open-ended questions most people are familiar with, I would assume. So assuming is wrong with me, I guess. So we really want to try to avoid the easy answers, right? The yes, the no, the I don't know is fair. They can say I don't know, because sometimes we do not know. But you want to encourage the thinking, and it might mean that they have to park a question and come back to you on it because they don't know the answer, and that's okay, because then we're gonna follow up on that. But you really want to kind of enforce the thinking, the processing, because otherwise you both gonna walk out of the conversation. You feel unheard, they feel not listened to, and no changes will happen. It's really important to have the affirmations because they do care, and there is a way to build those affirmations in without dampening the feedback that you have to give. You can say that you recognize the effort in the same sense that you can say that even the effort that they are putting in, you know, it would be better utilized if they put the effort in a different area, because then the overall patient care and flow is better utilized. It's still recognizing that their effort is there. It's just also acknowledging that they might not be the best in recognizing priority, right? Then it doesn't mean that they're a hard worker. It just might mean that they need help recognizing, if you look at the complete picture, where does that effort that they do have need to be put, right? So the affirmation can be positive. You can say, hey, I really appreciate your hard work in scrubbing the floor. But it's really important for us that we flip that table so our next procedure can start. You know, recognize it, recognize the effort, recognize the positive because it's there. The positives are there and they're often behaviors. And restructure with how you can utilize that positive towards the area where they need growth. Reflective listening. Reflective listening and summarizing, these kind of go together. So, active listening, talks about being present. Reflective listening talks about being present, but it also talks about recognizing without judgment and reflecting back as what they said. Summarizing is a component of that. So sometimes somebody's really overwhelmed and they say, I have to do this, 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 and this, and they have a word vomit. They're venting to you. And you want to turn their venting into something productive so that hopefully next time they don't get into the same situation. You don't want to push aside their feelings. So you want to recognize that they are overwhelmed and that they don't see the end to it anymore. And then it also helps sometimes to summarize back all the components that they named, because when you vocalize back what they said, they have to hear it again. And oftentimes there's like, well, I guess I'm not that overwhelmed. I guess I'm just, a little bit grouchy and this is not necessarily, more than yesterday and it's just not flowing well. So it's sometimes when you summarize back, it helps them recognize that part of this is just their emotion in the moment, because when they hear back what they said, they're like, no, no, when you put it that way, no, no, not like that. When they say, "Ugh, I always hate doing consultations," you're like, ugh, yeah, you really hate doing consultation. You're like, well, okay, not hate, just this, there's just a couple clients that are just really hard. Oh, yeah, no, okay, get that. What makes that hard? Well, conversation is going. Because chances are your feedback for that person would have been like, you get really affected by clients, how can we ensure it doesn't impact the rest of your day? That would part of my chance in that situation would probably have been the feedback that I would want to give as a manager, because I see the negative impact a difficult client has on the whole day when this technician is in that position, right? So so summarizing and reflecting things back will do a couple things. They'll feel heard. It ensures that you hear what they're saying. It reflects back, right? So it tells them exactly what they just said, and then but from a different person's perspective, in the sense that now they just heard you said what that they just said, and it sounds a little ridiculous probably. And they're like, well, no, no. Okay, maybe not. Maybe I'm a little dramatic there. Okay, that's fair, but maybe we can see where the actual problem lies, and then we can help ourselves, right? So those components, and again, the affirmation, these are components you can build in together, and you're not going to be perfect. I make plenty of mistakes, and we have a little bit of a fixing mindset. We want to help them so bad. So we want to just give all the answers, or we want to help them. So we'll take away the task if it really makes them so upset. But that's also not the answer. So these kind of tools will help us putting the reviews in this setting where it allows the employee to really think about their own job and um, their own way of doing the job and what they take out of it and what they take home with it. So the fixing versus coaching, and this is really hard, is there's something called the writing reflex, and they talk about this a lot in coaching education. And that's something I think I have a lot. So I think a lot of managers and people in leadership have that is we want to help, we want to fix it, we want to present a solution to take away the problem, but it doesn't actually help them, right? Because one, if I say, hey, okay, this employee comes to me and say, I really suck at IV catheters, I want to do better at them. I'm like, great, I'll give you CE. Fix the problem, gave you CE. Wonderful. Was online, cost me X amount of dollars, so I supported the employee. Yeah, except they don't learn well online. You know? They don't take in that way. They cannot process the information when somebody just tells them to it because that's not how they learn. They're a visual learner. They are a hands-on person. So it's even though we mean so well by fixing the problems, and yes, sometimes as a manager you do have to fix problems, many of them, but in the setting of where we talk about employees' growth, and employee behavioral changes, us presenting the solution is not going to invoke change in them. Us coaching them and facilitating their growth is going to help you getting an everlasting growth in the employee, right? Because then they feel supported, but you also give them an opportunity to grow in the way that they know how to grow, right? Because of their learning styles, their communication styles. There was a wonderful talk in a small conference I was at, and they talked about communication styles as dances. Because everybody dances a little bit differently. Everybody talks a little bit differently, right? So so, I mean, as much as we want to fix everything, our mindset has to be listen and give them the opportunity to present us with a solution about how they can grow and get better. So, we're going to ask questions, we're going to explore, we're going to be curious, we're going to build self-awareness, and we're going to create ownership. Again, the goal in this conversation essentially is the employee is going to do the talking. You're gonna set the guidelines and you're gonna help facilitate the conversation, but it's your employee, it's your team member that will do most of the talking, hopefully. So what does this look like, right? Because this is all great and it sounds, really wonderful on paper, but what does it look like? And if you guys want examples, if you're like, okay, well, I have this scenario. Again, I'm not claiming to be an all kinds of expert, but if you have a scenario, just let me know and we'll try to talk about it. But for some people, they have to improve communication. So the actual feedback is you need to improve in communication. But that's a really broad and hard conversation to have. If somebody comes in and tells me you need to improve communication, I'm like, okay, you know, where am I going wrong? Like, what am I doing wrong? Right? Because am I struggling with communication? Absolutely. Sometimes I'm doing this in my second language. This is really hard, and that way, do I need to improve my communication? There's probably some things that I could definitely improve on. Would that be equivalent to the feedback? I don't know because it's really broad, it's really direct, and I love direct. I'm so direct. I love it. But it's not from a perspective that to even understand the employee and how they're thinking and how they're internalizing everything. So a question could be, what feels difficult about communication, right? Another one, you need to show more initiative. Um, Again, and that's something that I hear actually from practice owners sometimes, like, oh, I just wish this employee showed more initiative. And that just, I have a bit of questions like, well, do we know that she's not showing initiative? What is showing that she's not showing initiative? Do we know if maybe she has, I don't know, 5 kids at home and a million other things? Like, are we putting ourselves in their shoes? We can never truly do that. So, again, this is feedback, but it doesn't help the employee other than it lets them know that we're unhappy with them, that there's something that they're doing that we don't like. But if we have the feeling that there's not an initiative, then my question for them is like, hey, you've been in this role for 3 years now, and you've done so well learning this new skill set, but the last year, you've been doing this skill set. Where do you feel like you want to grow next? Like, what do you want to do? You know? And in my brain, I can be like, I know she's not going to take it, but I don't know. Because I could be like, you want more CE? Well, I don't know if she grows that way. I don't know if she learns that way. So asking them what they need and how and what they want. And again, we're not boundaryless, we have a practice to run. But it does help us provide feedback without them feeling attacked. So if the struggle is that an employee needs to show more initiative, one, figure out in what form that needs to be more apparent. But then ask the question to get to know them and learn how they wish to show that, how they think they can grow in their role and they can do it, the things that you would like them to do, or what's holding them back. It could be like, hey, I know you've been talking about taking x-rays, or doing more improvement on your x-rays. What is holding you back lately on feeling like you can work on that? Oh, well, we've been short-staffed and we're overloaded. It's like, yeah, okay, we've been short-staffed. How can we try to build some time in then for you? What can we do? You need to be more reliable. Okay, what does that mean? What does it mean for you, for us as manager, right? Because it fluctuates per person. Because some person is like on the dot, not a minute later. Other people are a little more relaxed as long as the job gets done. So also make clear what we want to see, and then also ask what it means to them and what is holding them back from getting to what they think reliability should look like. So, and this is wonderfully created with the help of AI. The outcomes is psychological safety, better engagement, reduced defensiveness, stronger trust, higher ownership, sustainable growth, and emotional resilience. We're going to talk a little bit more about an actual structure of a conversation to give you guys a little bit more of a tool to try it out with. But this is essentially these are my goals when I go into a review, when I go into any check-in, because I do regular check-ins, because sometimes they only need to be 2 minutes because all is well, which is great. Um, but this is what I always want to thrive for my team members. Because if I can get this as a culture built into how I communicate and how I provide the space that they work in, then I can also, on the other end, say if it doesn't work out, I have done what I can do as a manager. And we have done what we can do as a business to support this person. And for whatever reason, and these situations very differ for, many reasons. But you can look at yourself in the mirror and not question whether you could have done better. And that's also important because, yes, this does mean that we allow ourselves to be at least a little bit available for their emotional outbursts. But what I tend to do in those moments is help them restructure and recognize what they need, but also how they can communicate as a team member when they have the needs that they have in their emotional outburst or frustrations or whatever it is. And this is not just a thing that you can put on a poster, which is, a pretty poster for sure, but this doesn't mean anything to an employee. These things doesn't mean anything to an employee unless they feel it. If they don't feel it, then these are pretty words. And honestly, a lot of these words and a lot of words that I sometimes hear come pass in the review, which have a lot of big meaning behind them, the word curiosity, you know, but we can still weaponize that word. I'm curious what you did all day. Okay. But it's like it's the environment, right? So it's the hey, I've known you have a lot on your plate, but I just want to help figure out where the flow is getting where the bottleneck is in the flow for you. So can you help me out just so I understand your flow? I'm curious, right? Without using the word. So these, there's wonderful terms, but they don't mean anything unless they feel it, and that's just an important difference. Where sometimes I think things fall flat where we try to do CEs or lunch and learns, and people come in and have these conversations with the team. But if there's no changes afterward, if there's no active input and effort and shift in the mindset of us as leadership, where we say, okay, I'm gonna be present next time I'm talking to this employee. I'm gonna check my boxes mentally to ensure that I am trying my best to ensure these things for my employee. And again, it still means that if you have to have a difficult conversation, you can still have the difficult conversation because feedback is still necessary. So I and people who know me a little bit more, I am very much a Dutch person as I am very direct. So anybody that works in my team knows that. And I, in the end, have zero issues saying, we both signed the agreement. In the agreement essentially state that this is what you have to uphold yourself to. And as a business, this is what we provide in exchange for those things. And there's this thing that my dad said to me when I first started managing, and he's like, that's just the reality of it. In the end, it sometimes will not work out because they cannot fulfill the things that we need them to fulfill as a business. And if you don't have a space in the business to provide a different role or task or whatever that does fit them for various reasons, then there is an end of their contract, right? There is a moment you part ways, and that's also okay. We cannot accommodate everybody and still make the business work, especially if you have truly tried what you can with providing the support and being a coach as well as a manager to them. Sometimes, you do part ways, and again, that there is a side to that where we also have to recognize like, okay, a person is in a certain state of mind where they need some coaching, counseling, therapy, maybe outside of work. And then all we can do is guide them within the boundaries of our practice. And with that, I mean, we're not therapists. Um, Coaching is not therapy. Um, and our goal is still the business and providing a good team that can do the services and the patient care that we would want to provide. So it is important to recognize that if you have employees that need more than what you can provide as a manager and the support for their growth within the business, that, hopefully there's resources that they can utilize either within the practice or elsewhere. And all we can do is be kind. We cannot really say like, hey, you need therapy. There are ways that we can say, hey, you know, if you ever feel like you need more help resources outside of outside of work, because actually I'm not a therapist, and then we can only talk about work related things within this conversation. But if you ever need support, we can happily help you provide the resources accordingly, right? You can help them recognize it and guide them to a therapist. Absolutely. We cannot straight up say, hey, you need therapy, because I don't think that would land very well. So just be mindful of that. So again, we're not avoiding any hard conversations, we're not ignoring performance issues, and we're not lowering our standards. We are delivering our feedback intentionally. We are ensuring that this is no judgment zone. Doesn't mean that there's still maybe things you have to address and behaviors you have to address and things that happen, but you can provide facts and reality without making it judgmental. And there is a place for dignity in that. buy-in. So with buy-in, we mean just like their own recognition and their own accountability and the willingness to grow within the company. If we provide growth opportunities within the company, as a business, I want that because I want good employees to stay for us for a long time, right? But it also means that they want to grow. So those conversations help acknowledging, help recognizing those things. Um, and it helps facilitate because sometimes they don't think about personal growth or professional growth, and some unintentional like insecurities are holding them back. And our conversations can help them at least think about it and help maybe take a tiny little step towards something that they thought they could never do. It also helps strengthening the relationship without losing the accountability, right? They still have their tasks, they still in their certain roles, and they still have that accountability. But it does help me a lot when I have these conversations in this matter with my team members to say like, hey, you know, talk to me. Like, day off, like t just talk to me. And I am also capable of keeping it productive without it just being venting, because venting is pointless. Rumbling, which is a term Brene Brown uses, rumbling is the opposite of venting in the sense that there's a productivity in it. It can still be about word vomiting some feelings, but it's also recognizing their own position within the situation and seeing what could have gone better next time. So reflect reality without judgment. And I think as a manager, especially as a manager, we're not always on the floor. And sometimes we heard, in my case, I hear from the practice owner certain situations that I didn't have to address, right? So I was not even there for the situation. I just hear something that I might need to address. So part of my job is kind of a little bit of an investigation and making sure I see all the sides to the best of my capabilities within the information I have available to myself. And then I also provide space for them to give feedback, right? I'm not going in this conversation already pointing the finger, but I am going to reflect on the reality of the situation that happened. And then I'm going to ask for their feedback. And then I'm going to see where the ownership in that situation is, which potentially still lies with the employee. But it might also mean that there's some shared ownership in the situation, right? So it will also help increase the clarity because, again, first of all, we have to ensure that we know what we expect of our employees. But if we have these conversations, it will also help us vocalize what we expect of them. And at the same breath, we can help support that so that we get aligned with each other. Right. So now I'm creating trust that goes two ways where I set some expectations because we talked about the capability for them to do those expectations. And if they feel confident doing them, great. Now I have these expectations of them. If they say, hey, I can do it, but I need some support on this matter, I'll ensure their support. And then I can have the expectation that they can do the job now, right? And those conversations will help uncover where sometimes those bottlenecks lie, if that makes sense. So feedback, there is a place for feedback. There's a wonderful place in feedback in teamwork and in communication. Because in the end, if we have team members with a growth mindset, which what we always strive for, then there is room for feedback because they want to know what can be done better. And it doesn't have to be saying that they did something wrong, but they could be that they talk about the situation and say like, okay, well, maybe next time we try this. And then they try it and they talk about it again and they adjust. And that mindset that comes and that feedback that in that situation is just for them an opportunity to grow because they don't take it as an attack because you have set the framework up for it. So obviously you want to ensure that the feedback is vocalized without it feeling like the attack that most employees kind of already feel the moment you say, hey, can we talk? Right? So the way that we can provide feedback, again, it's ensuring that the affirmation is there. I really appreciate how you're willing to help others when things are busy. Now we're sharing where the observation of improvement is. You know, I've noticed post-up notes sometimes are delayed during those moments that you're helping others, right? You're stepping away from your own task to help others, and we love you helping others. And there's a place and time to help others. Oh my God, we don't know what we would do without you. But if you're in the role of surgery tech, like it's really important for us that those notes get done because we want to have those notes done before we do the discharge. Because if we don't do that, then the discharge gets delayed. And now we have a person in the building longer than we want to. And now, the doc is barking in the back nonstop, even though it could have been. So it's okay to recognize the impact, but again, without judgment. And then you also you're gonna ask them feedback. You're gonna invite them to provide information as to why it is happening. Because the reality is, maybe she's getting asked, he or she's getting asked. And then she feels like she has to stop what she's doing to help this other person, right? And then I'm like, okay, that's good to know. You can say no next time. And if they have a problem with it, we will figure something, we'll work it out, right? So I'm allowing employees to say like, hey, just say no next time, and I'll also talk to the team and say that's important for you to finish this part because otherwise we cannot start with the next step, right? And then we also have to think about like, why are they asking this person? Do I need to support and train the employees on this specific task that they are asking this person to do? What is the reason, right? Is it just we don't like to do that other thing? I don't know. But so even though I have feedback because she delayed her task by helping others first, I now am in the spot that I am like, okay, so she's getting asked. So there's more to it. So now I'm gonna go back to the drawing table and figure out why there's that need for that. But I still was able to also guide and help her say it's okay to say no to your team members and say, hey, I really want to help you, but if I don't do this, then we cannot move on to the next step. And I'm responsible for this step, right? This is my responsibility here. It's okay because we all have different responsibilities throughout the day, I would assume. So we all should recognize where somebody, sometimes has to say no and say, hey, I cannot do that right now. But this is a way to, and you don't have to sugarcoat it again. And I've made this mistake in the beginning where you sugarcoat it so much that 5 months in, and like she's just, this person is just not getting it. I don't know why she's not getting it. I am saying the same things over and over. I'm recognizing her strengths, and I'm like giving her a little feedback in the ball of wonderful things I can say about her. So just make sure that you're clear, and you can be clear. And clear doesn't mean you have to be mean. It doesn't mean you have to, point the finger. It just means that the observation without the emotion. You are sharing the observation of what's happening and how it's impacting the floor. One other thing that's really important is asking permission. One thing I've noticed is we all process a little bit differently, especially when we're overwhelmed and we're in the middle of it, is that not everybody can get can receive feedback in the moment. Sometimes, we walk up and we're like, hey, can I? And you got these big eyes and they staring at you and nothing is happening here. And that's not a bad thing. That's just how who they are. They need time first so they can step away themselves from the situation, look back at the situation before they can be open to receive feedback. Is that the most easiest way? No. And are there situations that you have to just jump in and say something? Absolutely. But I do think we can recognize and think about if feedback has to be given right in that exact moment, or if we can say, hey, can I share something right now or in a little bit? Because we have to just touch base on something because it'll make your life easier next time, right? So it's important to ask permission because otherwise we just jump on them and their brain will shut off and guarantee whatever you have to say, either they'll not process it at all, they won't be able to listen to you because in their brain they're already bringing up a defense, or they go the other way and feel it's a personal attack, right? So ask permission. Ask, hey, can I share some feedback? And if they say no, that's okay. But then say, okay, I do want you to come back to me in a little bit when you're, are ready for it. So we're not going to say no and then it will never happen. It's okay to be like, not right now, but then we set up an expectation for them to come back. So this is kind of what a motivational review flow looks like. And this is a cycle you're going to go through over and over again. And it doesn't have to be a big conversation every time, but it kind of comes down to, natural flow of a moment of feedback or coaching or a big year review. And we'll talk through that a little bit. I'll keep it brief. So you're going to start with connection. You're going to start with the open questions. You're going to ask how they've been feeling in the role and where the energy is going most. And it helps establish that safety and it will help slow down the nervous system. And the nervous system is so much a part of this. Slowing down the nervous system is really important because that's is how they allow to process. They won't process if their nervous system is here. And that's where my horse training mind comes into picture is horses are really good at showing the two different sets of nervous system and how they switch it on and off. But humans kind of work the same. If they have the big deer eye and they're just staring at you, they're not nothing is gonna go through. So asking these kind of questions will help them slow down and start thinking. Explore purpose and reflect on progress. It's important, the fulfillment. I truly think everybody should feel some form of fulfillment in their job. I will be the first one to walk out of a job if I don't feel fulfilled, if I feel like I'm just there for the money, because I just can't. I cannot live like that. So I truly think everybody should feel some sort of fulfillment, but it might look different for everybody. So asking exploration questions will help you understand that employee, but it will also help you recognize the path of growth for the employee within the business that you have. When do you feel more energized? So we know compassion, fatigue, burnout, and those things are a big component of our field. And we can go down the rabbit hole of all those and we can start to have a really heavy conversation of that. But sometimes we can also switch our brain around and say like, what gives you energy, What is it? Is it dentistry? For some it's dentistry. Is it, communication with the clients? For some it's even end of life care. It's the hospice care. But it helps them recognizing why they were there. And it doesn't mean it's an all fix for the compassion fatigue and the burnout, but it will help them recognizing the brighter side, the good part of it. Like, I really, really like it when we can give the dog back to the owner and they'll be so much, I don't know, so much better with it. But all I'm trying to say is if you can recognize what fulfills an employee, it will help them grow as an employee because you can see a growth for them much easier when you know what brings them there, what brings them in every day. Recognize progress. What are you proud of and what has improved? Important and can be very different. For some, it's the communication side, for others, task related skills. It could be, just working together. I have somebody that worked herself back up to coming full time. She started off 1 day a week, and that's all she could do at the time. And, she worked really hard being able to do more. So it can be different for everybody, but it's important to recognize. Identify challenges and uncover motivation. So again, be curious and figure out where some of the challenges are for this employee. And again, Go into the conversation, even if you have feedback, but give them the opportunity first and foremost to see and vocalize their own challenges, because chances are that it's half your feedback. Uncover internal motivations. So again, it comes with that fulfillment piece, right? What brings them in? What is important to them? And then acknowledges purpose. So it's really recognizing that behavior, and it's recognizing what what spins, what thrives an employee to do their job, and how can we build that into a growth moment where they have these challenges. So how can I utilize what motivates them? How can I utilize how they are learning? How can I utilize how they're processing so that I can help them where they have their struggles? Envision the future and offer partnership. So I like to set very specific goals personally within the team. The practice owner started doing that before I came on. I think it's really great because it sets clear expectations. Like, in 6 months, we're a dental practice. So in 6 months, I want to be doing dentals on a dog under 3 minutes is a very common goal within my team. I'm like, okay, if you can do, dental x-rays on a dog with or on a cat under 3 minutes. Um, we can talk about a raise after that. I mean, that will be significantly improvement of how much time it takes currently, and therefore we could do way more in a day, right? So listening to what their personal goals are, and especially when they hopefully match up what we want within the business, and setting those as smart as possible. So specific, measurable. I don't know the other ones in English, but the goals. So they are, very clear and it's also very clear when they are achieved and the time frame. And even if they don't met the time frame, doesn't mean that they'll get the compensation or whatever or support or looks like if they need a little bit longer. And I'm not pushing a time frame on them. They come to me with a time frame. They say, I think in this amount of time, I think I can handle these new skill sets and I can be confident and comfortable in doing them. Right? I think in this amount of time, I am gonna spend my time on CE, and therefore 6 months down the road, I am much more knowledgeable in end of life care. So think about goals and make help the employees set them with you. And then it's how can I support you? And it can be with CE. Many people love CE, right? And love learning that way. But it can also be like, hey, I just need somebody to show me a couple times. It can be just multiple check-ins. I have some scenarios where I say, okay, the next couple of weeks, we're just going to do some check-ins so that we can talk about what you're trying to do and see how it's going. And I can help guide you along the way. But it's also asking how they prefer the feedback, how they would like to communicate in certain scenarios, and what is helpful for them. And sometimes it's also just having conversations like, hey, I know it doesn't always feel great if somebody has to take over your task, but I know you're newer, and if we're pressed for time, it's nothing personal, but we might just have to step in and take over, and then we'll get back to helping you out after, right? So we're not saying we're gonna cut you loose and you're just not doing it anymore. We're gonna ensure the support is there, but we're gonna also recognize that right now for the business, this is just how we need to do it so that we can get you back up to speed so you can take it back over. Right? And again, it's trusting that a lot of these scenarios, they are already thinking about it. I had to take off inventory for somebody because I thought this person was going to do it. She thought she was going to do it, and she tried it, and she was not for her. So I went in, knowing that I had to take it off of her hands, and she was like, "No, I definitely did not." Had enough knowledge and training to just take it on the way that I thought I could take it on. So I need to go back and do some more CE and support in a different way before I can take it back over, right? It's recognizing that they need support and vocalizing what they need. And the close with commitment, again, it's that goal. And it can be a small step. it can be such a small step. You know, you can be like, okay, I know you have difficulties with communication with clients, so maybe we can start with you do only these type of appointments, and once you're comfortable with that, then we can build on the different kind of appointments that take a little bit more educational purposes. So it's figuring out the first step that the employee can take so they can focus and keep growing along the way. So it's creating a goal, creating an expectation, and ensuring that the support is there so that when you close your conversation, you both walk away knowing what the expectations are and how they're gonna get there. So the balance between compassion and accountability. The risk when you stay too much in the coaching mind frame is that if there's no accountability and it's not set with, you don't end with goals and you don't end with expectations and follow-ups, is that over time your team will resent that. Will resent probably the team member and you along the way for it. So it is really important that you do set the boundaries and the expectations in your conversations. And it does sometimes, I say in the beginning, it's like, hey, you know, I am here to support and help you in all the ways I possibly can within the business. AKA, I am not a therapist.